let's get our day started with a panel discussion on connecting field and office. Our panel today will be led by Brett Simon, Unearth's Director of Utility Solutions. Joining Brett are esteemed guests, Russ Eibold, Guest Integrity Risk Program Manager from Duke Energy, and the man who told me everything that I needed to know and I didn't know that I needed to know about our sewer infrastructure in the United States, Lincoln Stevenson, our VP of Operations. So with that, off to you, Brett. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Nate. I'm definitely excited for day 2 of this conference. I definitely agree. Yesterday went swimmingly well. So appreciate all of you returning today, and any new attendees, welcome. For those of you who attended yesterday, I hope you all enjoyed our panelists, Russ, David, and Roger, who gave their insights from different areas within the vertically integrated utility. We had a generation expert, a distribution expert, and a gas expert. Today, we want to zoom in a little bit more on a specific topic to discuss cross-border detection and mitigation in the context on how it looked about a decade ago, how it's really been evolving, and what challenges remain. Yesterday, a lot of discussion centered around the use of paper, how paper has been really the biggest challenge from a records retention standpoint, and really that disconnect between the field and the office. So in that vein, I know that Nate already gave you both the guys a great introduction, but Russ and Lincoln, do you mind giving each a quick intro that gives us a little more insight into your background for our audience today?
Sure. Lincoln, I'll go ahead and go first. So my name's Russ Eibold. I'm currently in charge of the cross-border program for Duke Energy. My natural gas background started in 2004, where I began as a union laborer. In that role, I was installing gas lines on a bare steel cast iron replacement work, and shortly after that, in 2006, cross-border work was introduced, and I was fortunate enough to jump over to that avenue. And throughout my career, I've kind of taken leaps and elevated to my current capacity, where I oversee 5 different states and the cross-border programs we have attached to them states.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Russ, for joining us today. And Lincoln, you want to give yourself a quick intro?
Yeah, thank you. I am currently in the Vice President of Operations and Business Development for Champion CCSI. We do sewer locating and inspections across the country, basically from coast to coast now. So involved in a lot of different legacy cross-border programs, including Russ's program and many others. So, you know, a lot of different ways that we're collecting and disseminating information and to our customers. And we've been part of using Unearth now for about 2 to 3 years.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Lincoln, and definitely excited to hear both your insights. So, I mean, I know I love to talk, but my goal is not to have the audience listen to me talk. So I'm going to lean on both of you. Feel free to I know you have both worked together. And so really the topic we're going to be talking about is how the past process worked, how we've evolved, and how the future looks, in particular around cross-border programs, but any other examples that you might think are relevant between field and office is definitely fair game today. So let's get started. So Russ, I'll kind of start with you to lead things off. From a Duke perspective, how large is your cross-border program, and can you expand on how your data used to in the past be processed and reviewed?
Sure. So as I alluded to earlier, you know, Duke's cross-border program really came into play, and I look back on it now, and for the entire Midwest area, I would say it was 2006. So as you can imagine, like anything that's being implemented or launched to this degree, you never know how large it's going to get. I was one of the first crews that was focused on pre-locates, post-inspection. Shortly after that, they brought in more resources to handle legacy or existing pipelines in the ground. So from 2006 to today, as you can imagine, we run anywhere from 40 to 50 trucks a day, most likely, when you're looking at the large scope of things. And them trucks are designed to go out there and run mainline sewer and or go from a portable push cam from the house out. A lot of coordination and planning has to go into it because our specific work, you have to go in before they put the pipe in the ground, and you have to follow it up at the end of it for the prevention work.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, it definitely sounds like it's definitely was a complex process from in the past. So, I mean, from looking at today, what challenges were you facing in your day to day? And Lincoln, feel free to jump in. I know you're kind of on the more on the field side, so just trying to look at challenges from gathering the data to really processing it on the back end.
So comparatively speaking, it's not even comparable because when the first truck came in, we had a VHS tape that we were recording the camera inspections to. And we all remember VHS tapes. They take up a lot of space. They're not easily searchable. If you wanted to find something, it was almost impossible at that time unless you had just done the work. That transition to, shortly after to DVDs, which got a little bit easier, but a lot of process had to go into it. You had to stamp it, DVD, so you could tell what was on the DVD. And then it evolved to flash drives and the more that we progressed through the program, paperwork got introduced, and it became a whole host of problems. I would say the most complex years were the very beginning, as you were trying to figure out the process and procedure, and what we were out there to do and the importance of it. And then around 2011, 12, it was like it had reached a peak of there's so many different things that have to be done. How do you pull that all together? And I think that was the biggest challenge and hurdle back then is we had filing cabinets and everything else full just because of the way the data was collected and stored.
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, I started later than Rusted in the business, but I grew up in a corporate office that we did everything we could to eliminate paper, and moving things to the cloud and things like that. And I came over here 2017, and my first thing was like, what do we deliver? Like, what's our deliverable? What do we even give to the customer? And what I got sat in front of me was like shocking. It was a stack of papers, and it was a stack of DVDs, and it was spreadsheets, and none of it was able to be matched up easily. There was very little file or naming structures to the videos. The paperwork, to try to match those to the videos were nearly impossible. And then you go out into the field and you're trying to match that to what they're trying to put on the ground. So they're marking the utility on the ground and trying to put that onto a piece of paper and show the video. And it was shocking. It was shocking that that's how this industry was collecting data. So we slowly started evolving from that, right? And to where we are now, like Russ said, it's not comparable at this point. The slow evolution went to just having better naming structures, having better ways to match up the data, and to ultimately now some of our customers, we deliver everything in one place. We have our video, our what used to be on a spreadsheet, and our map. Those pieces of paper all put together on a map online that they can view.
I mean, speaking of slow, in kind of that vein, I mean, and paper process is never a real fast process, but what's typically the biggest drain on your time? What slows you down the most kind of on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the quicker we can get data into anything that we're doing, the better we are. And the slowest way to do it is to draw it, right? To put it on a piece of paper, or to sit and watch, a video and then try to match that up to so that's our biggest drain. And what our guys and gals in the field want to do is they want to inspect pipe. They want to look for crossbores. They want to look for problems. And a large part of their time, they aren't doing that. They're doing computer work, or they're doing paperwork, a lot of paperwork. So that's really the biggest drain of the time. And things that when we talk about continuous improvement and ways to get more productive, that's a lot of what we're talking about, is taking that time away from our people and putting it into something else.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely looking at the past, there's been a lot of challenges, but I know you guys say you currently use Unearth, and I mean, it's definitely one option in terms of technology space. But when you're trying to improve that process, Russ, what makes for a good utility technology? I know the Russ yesterday really put it clearly that you don't always want to just pick the next shiny object, but find the problem and try to identify the right technology for that. So kind of what's your thought process of trying to address these challenges that used to occur?
Yeah, I think Lincoln kind of said it without saying it. And I go back to the early days. One of the greatest missing links of this entire thing is gas installation work. Everything to do with natural gas has a very structured, consistent operator qualifications, and what that means is there is extensive training to even be qualified to put pipe in the ground. So when you talk about the sewer work and it's just thrown in there, it's a subset of it, and one of the biggest challenges I was faced early on was, do we wait for somebody to create a best practice or a standard, or do we have to attack that ourselves? So when you start addressing that, the standard and the procedures behind the work, you start to gain a little traction as far as if there's 50 crews out there, you want them all trying to do the work the same way. And this work is like watching paint dry. So at the end of the day, you need efficiency, and you need streamlined processes and procedures to go along with it. So to kind of answer your question, I would agree. There's been a lot of effort in the past 17 years to throw new things in there, the shiny objects like you're talking about. And at the end of the day, if you ran a camera truck, if you've managed a crew that's done it, or you've been in my current capacity where you've had a program, there's always been a missing link. There's always been an opportunity for improvement. And you look for advantages that aren't going to impact the operation if you test and try it out. One thing's been clear though, there's no better way than putting a camera in the sewer to determine if a crossbore exists. And as we kind of evolved here, I like to use this. I like to always be open to things, try them, and try them long enough to give them a shot to go, and then full implementation after that. So I think you just have to be very cautious and network and find the best practices across the industry to really get what you're looking for.
Awesome. And I mean, Lincoln, and to kind of follow up on that, you've used probably a variety of software solutions. Can you kind of expand on some of them that you've used across various utilities?
Yeah, so we've used it all, and a lot of time it's driven by our customer of what we use. So we have one standard software we use, POSS, and that helps collect our data and organize our data as we're collecting it. We've used Esri, we've used various mapping tools, and we've done, like I said, there's been a lot of paper in the background, and some of our own internal tools that we've built using Google Maps and stuff like that to try to help us, zone in kind of on the area where we're working on stuff. But a lot of times it's driven, by the customer of what they want to deliver, what they can put into their system. Yeah, so it's kind of varied. I did want, if you don't mind, Russ mentioned something I really wanted to kind of touch on sure. too. Was he talked about standardization and things like that, and I just want to touch on that real quick, because it's not just standardization for the field folks. Like, we want all of our field guys and gals doing everything the same way. It's a huge challenge when you're getting a stack of paper and you're getting DVDs and these are being mailed and you're not seeing them for a week sometimes. It's a huge challenge unless you can have a supervisor on every truck to look at this, to be trying to QC things, unorganized items a week or two later, right? So I wanted to touch kind of on the last question. What are some of our kind of time-consuming things from a office standpoint? The time-consuming item that we run into the most is using these other systems and legacy systems that we have, is that time it takes for the office to QC it and manage a project when they're doing everything a week later. So the quicker we can get data also is a huge time saver from the back office standpoint.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely the challenge. And yesterday we were talking about, I mean, paper can sometimes just be stuck in the truck or in a file cabinet that is lost or isn't given to someone till, like you said, a week or sometimes even months later, and trying to figure out who did what and when and where is just a nightmare. And then it sort of loses that auditability that regulators are really needing. Going back to more of the technology, I know you've used a number of systems at different utilities. Russ, from a system rollout standpoint, and also Lincoln, feel free to jump on here. I mean, it probably takes quite a bit to roll out a system. And so kind of what's the typical span for rolling out these systems? And for you, Lincoln, for your teams, what's kind of that change management journey and what's it like when a new system is rolled out?
Brett, are you referring to like a software system, or are you referring to a standard including the technology behind that?
The all encompassing.
Okay. Well, then to answer that question, it varies, but it's an exhausting process. First and foremost, to keep up with the industry best practices is a challenge in itself. So you're constantly seeing new innovations, new ways to do things. So you have to be fairly flexible with the standards so that you can adjust as things develop. That being said, I've been a part of these where, and you have to remember pre-post, legacy work, two different things. But if we just look at pre-post and you're talking about all this paper and all these video files, terabytes of data, not to mention instruction on how to collect that data, it's a challenge, because a lot of times you're instructing people how to draw something on a piece of paper a specific way without making a human error, because you don't get that paper back in weeks of time, right, to review it. So I'm gonna give you an idea that if you've got a normal sized utility, it's 1.5 to 2 years to get that all the way through. And then it's about sustainment, right? Continuous training is an ever evolving thing at that point. So that's what I'd say.
It's darn near impossible on our side a lot of times. When it's a very difficult challenge, because our sewer camera crews work in teams of 2 and they're spread out. So like if you think like a normal construction project, there could be hundreds of people on it, right? And they can go to maybe a similar training and all get up to speed at the same time. We're a small when a utility is rolling out a new software package or a new policy or whatnot, we're usually a sub of a sub sometimes, or we're just a small piece of it, and then we have a lot of small pieces as part of that puzzle, right? So it makes it very difficult to get every single person in every truck on the same page quickly, which is why things moving towards a world of web-based and cloud-based, so information's on hand quickly and available quickly, is where we need to go to be a little more nimble and be able to get our people this information quicker and get it from the utility into those people's hands as fast as possible.
No, and that's
Brett,
really
can I jump in real quick on
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I'd actually love to throw a comparison out there. So Unearth for us is fairly new, right? and it's only in our legacy program at this point. But I can tell you that rollout there is drastically different. So I do have a smaller amount of crews that are working in that program, and that means less people you have to train. But just the technology being included in that process, as opposed to our pre-post, which is still paper form and flash drives and stuff like that, they're not even comparable. I mean, you're talking to train somebody in the Unearth, it's a couple hours, and within a few days they're up to speed. If you're talking about training somebody how to draw this on a piece of paper, locate it a certain way, pass that to the next person, that person put pipe in the ground, pass that to the next, completely different process. So I look forward to the days to finding something to close that long gap, or near impossible, like Lincoln said.
No, and that's definitely really the goal. And I think the trend of technology as we move forward is making it as intuitive as possible. Massive training programs are shown to not work. It needs to be intuitive to the end user. And we're all used to using mobile apps and our phones. And so making it as close to what we see in the everyday world is definitely a goal. So definitely appreciate that candor, Russ. But is there anything, as we've sort of shifted to this digital transformation and moved away from paper and VHS, that's made it a little bit harder? Has anything gotten harder? Maybe Lincoln, Russ can see when you mess up quicker, but is there anything else that's kind of been harder?
Yeah, that's a great point, Brett. Like now our customer, like Russ, can actually watch us mess up real time and have to make corrections instead of, finding out after weeks of us going through the information. But there's always challenge. Like the mobile apps are fantastic, but they're mobile, right? And we're not working in an office setting. So as the technology improves, the infrastructure of just being able to access things need to improve. It's kind of all out of our hands, but the better Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi becomes, the better cell phone. Our guys in the field use basically cell phone air cards to connect to the internet. And as you know, if you have a cell phone, I've had a lot of technical difficulties on my Wi-Fi here in the last 30 minutes. So, but if you're on a cell phone, it'll work great here and then not great over there. So there, you got that little bit of a gap of just being able to have consistent connection to the internet. And that's going to be a challenge. And then also you have a generational type thing. I think the guys and gals that have been with us for a while, they're more comfortable doing things on paper. That's the way they've always done it. But if you hire a 22-year-old kid and you want to train him to run a truck, they wouldn't know how to use the paper, right? They have the mapping online, and going through an app is way easier for them than writing it down. So there's a generational type gap that we have, and the buy-in's usually a little easier from the newer folks.
Cool. Russ, do you have anything to add on to that around challenges that the technology has either brought on, or introducing new challenges as we kind of move into this digital age?
Well, it's done one thing. It's allowed us to, from my perspective, see work in real time. So I look for opportunities in the future where the system drives a little more quality control. It's like spell check, right? I couldn't spell a word today if I needed to, but that's because something fixes that for me. So there's always going to be a human element to this work, inputting the data and making sure it's accurate and complete is one of my biggest challenges. So I look for things in the future that kind of highlight areas that are suspect to be an issue there. I think there's also opportunity that's already here that I haven't had an opportunity to look at, which is, reviewing that data even deeper down to the actual inspection, but do it in a system, if you will. So them are opportunities I'm looking forward to trying out here in the near future. I wouldn't say there's a whole bunch more than that, minus some small things.
Cool. No, that's great to hear. But I mean, as we end this quick Q&A panel, and I definitely appreciate both of you joining us today, I want to end a little bit forward looking. I mean, I know I don't have a crystal ball, and I mean, who would have even thought 2020 was a thing, looking back at it. But in the short time we have left, a common theme in this summit that we had yesterday and are going to be finishing up today is identifying a vision for what the future really holds. So knowing that, what are some of the challenges that remain, and what are you looking forward to the most by continuing to invest in technology? What are some of those, I don't know, I want to call it wishful thinking, but kind of things that excite you guys the most? And Russ or Lincoln, either of you can start answering.
I mean, I envision a future of automation, right? I think everybody either envisions that's what the big next step is, or fears that's the big next step, depending on how you look at it. But I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest drains is just the paperwork and the computer typing things in. You're a data entry person instead of a sewer inspector some days. So automation of work, as you're running a pipe or whatever you're using the technology for, it's mapping it and it's giving you that information real time. There's still, again, the human element's still going to be there, but there's less room for mistake, like Russ said. And then from a back office perspective, I think Russ put the analogy he said with spell check is a great thing, because you can't QC every single video as you expand. Duke Utilities and Duke and Piedmont, if they have 50 trucks running a day, the amount of video they're getting in there's not enough hours in the week to ever catch up with that. So having a system where it's catching the obvious issues, both data and video issues, and kind of spitting out a report, hey, these are the ones you need to look at, and maybe even further making corrections and stuff like that. It's kind of how I envision it going forward. I don't see the flying cars and the drones flying through sewers at some point doing these inspections for us. I feel like there's always going to be people involved, but allowing those people to be human beings and knowing that people are going to make mistakes is going to help close that gap of the training that has to be done to get there to be able to perform this job.
Cool. Russ, what excites you the most?
Well, I'll give you my wish list. I manage the cross-bore program, right? So we're collecting historical information, places where our pipe's already existing. That's one thing. But if we completely go over to the installation of new pipe, I think there would be an industry-wide consensus that it is a risk to put that pipe in the ground, and we want to put that pipe in the ground the right way, and we don't want to damage utilities. And right now, I'm looking at a bucket of sewer facilities at that. I'd love to see the industry kind of adopt a plan to where not only sewer, but all the other utilities kind of go into a system-based deal. And I think it's in the works. I think there's opportunity because of one call and all this other stuff. Typically, the sewer is it's not located by the municipality when installations occur. So at some point, the work we're performing on the pre-post, if it was put in a system to know where all the other utilities in the industry are, now a technology kind of helps prevent damage in a software, if you will. And maybe someday that software can be connected to the equipment that's putting that pipe in the ground. And if that comes about, I think it's a true advantage, because there is a lot of utility damages that occur out there. So.
No, and that's definitely our current reality, and there's not a lot of opportunity to try to resolve that. And I mean, speaking of mapping, sometimes it's even a challenge. I just bought my own home, trying to figure out where my plot line is on my own property. So just figuring out, multiply that is just mind-boggling. And we actually got a question from one of our audience members, and thank you. I forgot to mention, if you had questions, please use the GoToWebinar pane. But the question came in, and Lincoln, Russ, feel free to either of you take this, but are you guys using Trimble in the field? And if not, what is your process of mapping?
We're not using Trimble for the cross-board prevention work or the legacy. Our process for the mapping is, if there's any type of measurement needed, it's done based off of fixed points or anything that can be walk wheel measured. The reason for that is, I think it's an opportunity for us, because we've never done it, that we haven't had an opportunity to go look at this point. Lincoln might have a different perspective.
We have used Trimble on different projects through the years, but it's not very standard across the board of being used. Trimble or any other technology that would allow us to map would be an advantage going forward. It's just everybody having the appetite to make that part of the scope of work.
No, and I know accurate GPS in general is, I don't want to say relatively new, but it's definitely just getting more and more accurate as days go by. So,
well,
no, I think
Brett, can I add on that real quick? That question, what would be an advantage that everybody could consider is, some of the reasons that doesn't exist for us is a lot of times, to get to the precision you need, it's a clunky large device. If that device was here in your hand, and that device, you could walk, you could map, and you could collect that GPS, and it circles through the technology that we're using, like an Unearth. I think it now fits in the process of work a lot easier.
No, that's a really good point. It needs to be as usable as possible, going back to that user-friendly, user-experienced standpoint for both the field and our customers. So in the couple minutes we have left, I mean, Russ or Lincoln, in the vein of digital transformation, are there anything, any takeaways that you'd like to give our audience today who are attending?
The main takeaway is moving into these cloud-based, technology-based systems is a big advantage over the old way. I think there's a lot of folks that are, for whatever reason, the old way is the best way because that's the way we've always done it. It is more time consuming. It's harder to organize, and it's the future. The future, it's been here for a while now. I think it's time that a lot of utilities take a little bit of jump into this more cloud-based technology than the old way, and there's probably some scary points to that, right? But sending DVDs and flash drives all around and stacks of paper that get thrown in the back of people's trucks and stepped on and lost out the window, that can all be eliminated by having one place to put everything. Real time, every time, and not having to worry about where that data went or whose hands did it to be exchanged through on the way. So that's kind of the biggest takeaway that I have, and it's making contractors' lives a lot more easier, and I'm sure it's making utility life a lot easier also.
Awesome.
I'd also add that I think it's important to note that you have to give everything a shot. If you're a project manager of some sort, you're an asset tracker of some sort. If you're using a spreadsheet, the one thing I've learned is you could apply this to almost anything. If you need to know where you left a certain amount of cones on a project site, you could use this technology for it. If you're recording the preliminary condition of a job site before you go in and you're excavating, you could use the technology to your advantage. Otherwise, a lot of times you're left with collecting that information and putting it in a filing cabinet somewhere, completely separated from everything else.
Cool. Well, I think we're a little bit over time, so to the moderators, I apologize, but hopefully we can get back on track. Thank you both, Russ, Lincoln, for your time discussing
Sure.
the long road to connecting field and office. I definitely see a lot of progress being made. I mean, VHS isn't even a thing anymore, right? But we definitely have a lot of work to be done. I also want to thank our audience for listening in. And so, Nate, I'll turn it back over to you.